I just feel better when I'm in a thin body, that I feel better when I don't have all of this weight on my body. And I always say or think, of course you feel better, because now you're in the body that our society rewards, celebrates, gives access to, and says is worthy of dignity, care, and is desirable.
Hello YouTube, and welcome to the Body Honesty Project. My name is Lydia, and today we are talking all about how fat acceptance and the BoPo are setting you up for failure. And today I have with me Katie Eastgate, who will be assisting me in the conversation. Now, the first part of this three-part conversation will focus on why the BoPo thinks that people desire thinness. And newsflash, it's not the health benefits, it's the perceived social clout. But Katie and I have different opinions on this. So, on with the chat. Joining me today, we have Katie from panel 2. Now, I know many of you remember Katie's weight loss story, but we don't know much else about her. So, Katie, can you please introduce yourself to my audience and let them know who you are, where to find you, and what you do?
Sure. My name is Katie, and I'm 39. I stay right at home right now with my 2 kids. And at my heaviest, I was 360 pounds back in 2008. And I took about 7 years to lose 180 pounds. And for the last 7, 8 years, I have maintained that weight loss. You can find me online under just my personal socials, Katie Eastgate, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Thanks, Katie. So the topic for today is fat acceptance is setting you up for failure. And Katie brought this TikTok to me. And before we get into it, Katie, can you tell my audience, what is it about this TikTok that made you compelled to comment?
Well, a lot of it felt like things that I've heard for a long time, and even things that I've told myself at certain points in my life before I started losing weight. And I'm starting to witness it go from its own sphere to a lot more mainstream. And I feel like we need to have a lot more voices of people who maybe had different experiences to kind of help give people a better idea of what weight loss actually could be like.
That's a very good point. So let's get into it.
A common response that I get from folks when I am talking about the harmful impacts of intentional weight loss and why I don't participate in weight loss goals with my clients as a therapist.
So Katie, what do you have to say about that? She doesn't participate in weight loss goals as a therapist.
Well, I actually will commend her, because realistically, if you are a client trying to find a practitioner or a practitioner trying to find clients, it's best to be open and upfront. So I do commend her for at least being upfront with her clients so they can then make the judgment whether or not she'll be the right practitioner for them.
Okay, good.
Hmm.
We'll continue on.
Is that I just feel better when I'm in a thin body, that I feel better when I don't have all of this weight on my body. And I always say or think, of course you feel better.
And why shouldn't we feel better? There's a
Right.
whole plethora of reasons why we could feel better. Katie?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I feel tremendously better. I'm about to turn 40, and at my heaviest, I was 25. I feel so much better now at this age than I did in my mid-20s. So, yeah, I do feel much better.
Mm-hmm. She gave us permission to feel better.
Because now you're in the body that our society rewards, celebrates, gives access to, and says is worthy of dignity, care, and is desirable.
Okay, so she said a lot there. Dignity, care is desirable. Katie, where do you want to start with this?
Well, I can start with dignity and care, with those concepts being not really quantifiable, and the idea that they kind of really mean different things to a lot of different people. So if I have something that I might think is dignified, somebody else could take that as completely disrespectful. There's a lot that kind of plays into that, and I'm not really comfortable with that blanket statement that you'll across the board have more dignity and care, especially when that's not a quantifiable thing.
Yeah, I don't know where she's getting that from, and against what scale? I mean, it sounds nice, but I'm not exactly sure in what scenarios is she basing that on. Because an overweight person in a doctor's office hearing the cold hard truth from their doctor, they could say that that wasn't dignified, but it's
Absolutely.
necessary.
Absolutely. And there's just so many factors that could play into that. Like, I'm from the US and it's pretty common when you meet people to shake hands. But I know that if you go to other countries, there are a lot of different greetings that people will give each other. And they might take that as a sign of disrespect when you're trying to show them dignity. So there's just a lot to unpack with those loaded types of terms for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I think about care, I did a recording with Rena recently about Jordan. I'm assuming that that will be released before this video, but I don't know yet. But in there, Jordan was complaining a lot about their inability to care for their lymphedema, but didn't want to do the things that were prescribed. They kept on wanting more care. Like, this is the care. The care is wear the compression socks, do the exercises, and follow keto. This is the care. But for some reason, a lot of them think it's like abuse. It's not care.
Right. And I mean, realistically, about 8 years ago, I actually had reconstruction surgery on my ankle. And I went through, gosh, about 3 months of rehab with that. I had to relearn how to walk, how to run, how to ride a bike, all sorts of different things I had to relearn how to do after that surgery. And I was given homework all the time that I had to go home and perform my exercises. And my physical therapist always knew if I was doing my homework. So that was all part of my care. And I had to care for myself.
And what do you have to say about desirability?
Desirability. That is, oh man, that's again very hard to quantify. And at least from my personal experience, um, I met my husband when I was pretty close to my heaviest. Been with him this whole time. So I'm not seeking desirability from strangers, I guess. And so when I do get people commenting or approaching me or anything, it can often be very off-putting. It can be very creepy. And it's a lot more than I ever had to deal with when I was overweight. And because I was overweight, I think for quite a long time, sometimes I don't always feel I know how to deal with it. And it's just odd sometimes.
Right. I don't think anyone is entitled to desirability, but I also think that there is someone for everyone. I do think that no matter how you are built, there will be someone who finds you attractive. I think the issue is that many of these fat activist women are not interested in the men that find them attractive.
Absolutely. And so it's kind of ironic to me that they're allowed to have their preferences over who they find desirable, but they are asking basically everyone to find them attractive and desirable. And that's just not how attraction works at all. You can't force it. And I personally would never want to be with somebody that I felt I had to force to want to be with me seem all that fun.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've tried in the past to have relationships with people that I was intellectually or emotionally connected to, but not physically, like at all. And it's hard, and they didn't work. It does nobody anything good because we're
Right.
trying to both convince ourselves that this is working, and it isn't. The
Right.
double standard, though, like, I don't know if you saw my Lizzo video from before. No, it's not about the lawsuit or anything. It was just about her body positivity, but she has a real double standard because all of her women are fat and all of her men are like superhuman, like ripped, completely
Yes,
ripped.
and I've definitely noticed that seeming to be a more common theme within that sphere as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of ironic for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that they need to be desirable to everybody, but they only desire themselves, like the most
Right.
fit, most beautiful.
And realistically, I think this idea or this notion that you're gonna ever have every single person find you desirable. That's just not reality. That's kind of a pipe dream, I suppose. I don't really think that that's going to exist.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think it's because you actually feel better in a smaller size body, although some people do because their bodies are designed to be small.
So some people's bodies are designed to be small. I agree. I mean, within a scale, I have small bones. I am designed to be smaller than my sister, who has a bigger wrist, and she's designed to be bigger than me. But is anybody designed to be morbidly obese?
Not in my estimation. I know I certainly wasn't designed to be 360 pounds. I wasn't designed to be 180 pounds. I wasn't designed. I I put in a lot of work to change my lifestyle to do this. And realistically, along the way, I really had to realize that my actions have consequences. It's not designed, it's the consequences of my actions.
Exactly. I mean, I wish I kind of knew a little bit more about body types and genetics when I was younger, because like there is truth within a scale, meaning at 5'4", my body might have been more suited to being 120 or 115 pounds, but I was trying to get it to be 105. And that's just like, but that's because that's how my other skater friends were designed to be. Like, that's just the difference in their bodies. But I'm talking about 5-10 pounds here. I'm not talking about 100 pounds or 200 pounds
Right.
difference in like how we're designed.
Absolutely. And I know, like, for example, for my height, there's a range of about 35 to almost 40 pounds to still be in the healthy range. So
Mm-hmm.
when I think of different body types, that's where I kind of lean towards now. And the idea that you might be different shaped, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
fairly pear shaped and I'm always going to have the junk in the junk. That's just what it is.
Right.
But to be 100, 150, 200 pounds above a healthy weight, I truly don't believe anyone is actually designed to be that way.
But I think you're feeling better because you're no longer suffering from the impacts of anti fat bias, which is everywhere in our culture.
Is anti-fat bias everywhere in our culture, Katie?
I mean, maybe if you're looking for it, I guess maybe I wasn't truly looking for it because I didn't really ever feel that way. Um, maybe at certain points in my life, but now looking back through all of this and seeing how much time has passed and how much experience I've gained over these years, it wasn't anti-fat bias that made me feel the way that I was at 360 pounds. I couldn't tie my own shoes. I couldn't walk more than about 10 steps without running out of breath. I found out later on you can give yourself obesity-induced asthma. Never had asthma as a child, got it in my mid-20s. And it wasn't anti-fat bias that caused that. It was the excess visceral fat that didn't allow my lungs to expand. So I guess maybe if you're looking for that reason, you'll probably find it. But at the end of the day, I was dealing with literal physical issues that were preventing me from being mobile after a certain point. And that was not anti-fat bias. That was, I needed to make a change in my life.
Well put. I find that there is anti-fat bias in certain areas. Like there are assholes everywhere, right? There's going to be someone who is not going to like you just because you're fat, or not give you promotion just because you're fat, or be rude to you in a store just because you're fat. And I'm not saying that stuff does not exist, but I think that we've taken it so far as now we're using it as an excuse to not do what we can. Like,
Yes.
everything is now, the airline is anti-fat bias because the seats are too small. Like,
Right.
we're going too far.
Way too far. I know, for example, I've heard people get upset that they can't ride, for example, like airplanes, roller coasters, things of that nature. And I can give a wonderful example of a time I was denied that experience. In 2013, it was about 5 years after I had started losing weight. So I had lost about 120 pounds by that point. And I knew I'd been to Cedar Point previously at that size. So my husband and I took a trip to Cedar Point and wanted to ride all the roller coasters up there. And we rode a good portion of the rides up there and had no issues. But for like 4 years prior to this, I'd been hyping him up about my favorite roller coaster, Millennium Force.
Mm-hmm.
And we finally waited like 45 minutes in line, get all the way up there. And no matter what I did, I could not get my lap belt to actually click. So the ride operator came down, told me I was not allowed to ride, made me leave. And unfortunately, I mean, it sucked. It was not a fun experience at that moment. It really just kind of felt like it came out of nowhere, like a Jose Ramirez right hook to the jaw. And I just was ready to just kind of go home and forget about ever doing anything like that again. And then I realized that I had already ridden a whole bunch of rides that day and had a whole bunch of fun. And then I also realized that I was so much closer to riding Millennium Force than I had been 5 years ago. So I knew that if I just kept going, I was going to get to my goal. And we went back exactly 1 year later. We went, as soon as the gates opened, sprinted right to that coaster. And I was the third train of that morning. And I cannot even stress when I say that click on that seatbelt was the most satisfying moment of my life.
Oh, I can imagine. That's so wonderful that you were able to look at it as progress, because, earlier, I'm like, well, I probably wouldn't have even been able to get in the seat. So
absolutely. I hadn't
so I
even
got closer. And then the next time it clicked.
Exactly. And then realistically, I found out afterwards that from the time that I had gone previously until that point, they really did shorten the restraints. And that actually did make me feel better too, that I really hadn't just like, wait, I know I rode this ride before.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, the best part was just knowing that I didn't fight it. I didn't try to make a scene. I didn't go on the internet and rant about it. I just made a plan and I followed through with it.
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, Cedar Point had every right to kick me off that ride. That's a safety issue if my restraint doesn't work.
Oh yeah, we've seen accidents. So
we have. It's just tragic. And I know based off of my experience, so many of these things could be preventable.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, realistically, that roller coaster that I was trying to ride, that's 300 some feet in the air. It goes 90 miles an hour. I would have been a grease spot.
Well,
that would not
if it didn't click and the guy said, it's okay, go ahead, would you have gone?
The thing about it is, in that moment, I probably would have. And that's why I am so thankful that ride operator did his job and kicked me off, because he was thinking about my safety in a moment where I was only thinking about experiencing the fun.
Right. I'd like to thank Katie once again for coming on the channel. And if you enjoyed this discussion, you won't want to miss part 2, where we get into what it means to have a thin passport. So until next time, stay body positive, but also body honest.